Hey, Mark McNutt here, and I'm going to be talking about the stars and everything stellar. I'm looking forward to sharing with you about this month. I always do this under the new moon and coming up to the new moon, I should say, and the new moon starts the cycle for the whole month. So we're at Taurus. We're going to be a Taurus new moon on Tuesday, the May 12th, and then we're going to have a lunar eclipse once the sun goes into Gemini. And lunar eclipse is also a full moon. It's a very special full moon, and it's a time when everything comes into a realignment. So I believe that a lot of the month of May is going to be about like tuning into what do we ground through, what do we want to root ourselves through, just like plants, and how do we want to grow? How do we want to take in that nourishment from the stars, from the air, from all the other plants and planets around us? Uh, Everything is very personal this month. So I was looking at it and I was like, wow, this isn't so much about the outer planets. This is more about the inner planets. So the inner planets are very individual. So I could say a few things about them, a few overview things, but be aware that this time it really affects different people different ways, and it's a springboard from where you're coming from to where you're going to. So if you want to get the real information, um, please get a reading. Please, you can visit my website, but always the personal reading is where it's at. I'm not a person who likes to make generalizations. I'm a Moon in Virgo, and I like to really get it right. And we're all individuals, just the same people. Even if you have the same sun, moon, and rising sign, that's 12 times 3, that's 1,728 different choices right there. There's 60 billion possible horoscopes. So everybody is an individual, and this time is very individual. Let's talk a little bit about Taurus. So we've been in Taurus for a while. It's planting time. It's spring up here in the northern hemisphere, and it's a time to really get rooted with the earth again. After we get rooted with the earth, what happens is the next phase is going to be reaching out to others. We're going to recognize that it's high springtime and it's time to propagate like the flowers. And that's why we just had a Beltane. It was probably a very strange Beltane for many of you. Um, and we're going to very soon be in the time of Gemini. Taurus, again, about rooting about the earth. Gemini is about communication and reaching out beyond ourselves. Both today, Venus goes into Gemini, Sunday the 10th, and Mercury is already in Gemini. Mercury spends several months in Gemini. Usually it's 1 month per sign. Mercury is very comfortable in Gemini. And so that's very much a time of communication and communion and sharing our ideas. And Venus in Gemini as well, very much about networking and about the people element. And again, it affects different people different ways. So there can be a real contradiction in the air, which will affect things and affect different people different ways. People always want to know about Mercury Retrograde. It's one of the most popular subjects in astrology, along with Saturn returns and the void of course moon. Void of course moon happens so often that we're not going to address it here, but it's not a time to start things. Saturn is going retrograde very soon. Next week we'll be talking about that, or rather, we'll be talking about it right away, but it's going retrograde next week. And Mercury has entered Gemini, and so Mercury has the winged messenger. It has to do with the timing of our communications and how we weave that networking. Then, so Mercury gets almost all the way through Gemini, and then it starts to go retrograde right at the end of the month. The last few days of May and up until the summer solstice, Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde, I always say it's a time for brain melt, but it's the necessary exhale. So most of us are ruled by Mercury in some way. So if you're a Gemini, if you're a Virgo, Sun, Moon, or Rising, you're ruled by Mercury right there. If many of us, probably most of the rest of us, have Sun conjunct Mercury, so very few of us are not ruled by Mercury in some way. So communications are very important. Probably, if you're of the small group of people that is not ruled by Mercury in some way, you're probably already not listening to this. Yeah. So Mercury retrograde end of the month and 3 weeks at a shot, all in Gemini. So get your communications and get your sharing and do your networking right now, because the element of Mercury retrograde in Gemini is one of mind clearing communications and kind of letting go of the dross of all the stuff that we've internalized and just releasing it. And then Venus also in Gemini. Normally that's a time for being very social. Some of our social life will take place online, but this is a good time to, if the pandemic allows, this is a good time to come out of our hidey holes and to start to integrate with others as well. Then, most importantly, there's a lunar eclipse which is visible at the end of this month on May 26th. Here in the West Coast time, it'll happen right before dawn. Earlier, if you're on the East Coast, it's going to be about 1 or 2 in the morning. And a lunar eclipse goes on for several hours. It's going to be a blood red moon. It's going to be super big. Lunar eclipses are about our emotional shadows. They're about moods and emotions, and they bring up the emotional element. Right. So I've been talking about the intellectual element coming up with all this Gemini stuff, but it's going to be Sun in Gemini, full moon in Sagittarius for this lunar eclipse. So you can expect this all to be a little bit loony at the end of the month. And the time from May 26th until the next lunation on June 10th is going to be a time for dealing with your shadow. And you'll also be doing that under Mercury retrograde in Gemini as well. So ruling planets. Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini and Virgo. And then the full moon will be in Sagittarius, and the ruling planet of Sagittarius is Jupiter. Now, I'm really stoked and excited about Jupiter this month because, besides the fact it conjuncts my sun, once every 12 years it'll do that for a person. But Jupiter is entering Pisces in a few days. And Jupiter in Pisces usually Jupiter takes a year per sign, but Jupiter's going to dip its toes into Pisces and then start the retrograde soon after. Jupiter is how we expand and grow and broaden our horizons. So this is typically a good time for, if you're really laced by Jupiter, you'll find that the end of this month and beyond that will be a good time for travel and a good time for reconnecting with old lost loves and old connections and just tuning into what's really important. So I see a lot of soul searching at the time of the lunar eclipse and soon after. I see a building cycle that's really hard to describe before that because it's very individual, very different for each person. So you get a reading, not because I'm looking to give, it's not for me, it's for you. I love to serve people. And then besides that, so Jupiter goes into Pisces, the sign of compassion, of caring, of giving. Also, it's Jupiter in Pisces very strong on the psychic realms and on the ability to kind of see past the veil into the truth. Then Jupiter goes retrograde, middle of the month, along with Saturn going retrograde in the middle of this month. So just in a few days. And when planets are retrograde, or when they're about to go retrograde, and this is important with the Mercury thing too, there's time when they're stationary, when they're not moving. So, for example, with Mercury retrograde, a few days before goes retrograde, and for a few days after the retrograde ends, it's not moving. So it's kind of this whole, it's a whole different vibe. And it's like a photograph rather than a movie. So it really brings, in case of Mercury, it brings the ideas, the communication to the forefront. With Jupiter, it brings the truth, the wisdom that underlies things, and the desire to be free, the desire to expand and grow. Saturn going retrograde, very much the balancing opposite of Saturn being about what we have to take seriously and all that. So Saturn going retrograde is usually can be kind of oppressive sometimes because it makes it more that Saturn thing. Like here I'm talking about, yeah, go out and be social and go out and connect with people. And then I'm like, but Saturn's going retrograde, so you know, finish your taxes, finish your communication, get your business in order before you embrace the summer. So yeah, a lot there. I could say much more about the Jupiter being in Pisces. Jupiter goes back into Aquarius a little later, so we'll visit that one again. Saturn in the middle of Aquarius retrograde, many planets in air signs, so very strong mental activity now. But this being Taurus, I want to remind you, root with the earth, root with the earth, root and ground, because we can grow so much taller when we have strong roots. So that's all for now. Get that personal reading. Visit the website, and also please like the Arius News channel on YouTube, as well as become a subscriber. It doesn't cost anything. So looking forward to talking to you personally very soon. Happy springtime.